option like that to be able to attack mismatches.
Yes, very. She's a big wing, so a lot of times there is a smaller defender on her, so for her to be able to take advantage of that is huge.
When Sophie Cunningham watched JCS Sheldon poke Caitlin Clark in the eye during that heated June 17th game against the Connecticut Sun, something inside her snapped. Not with anger, but with a fierce, protective instinct that had been dormant for years. The same woman who had earned a black belt in Taekwondo as a child was now watching her rookie teammate being targeted by opponents, while referees turned a blind eye. Sophie, known for her fire and heart, realized in that instant that someone had to step up, not to fight, but to defend something purer: fairness, dignity, and the right to play without fear. Yet what no one in the arena could have known that night was that Sophie's decision to become Caitlin's unspoken bodyguard would awaken memories she had buried long ago, and reveal a bond between two women that reached far beyond basketball. One forged through shared pain, resilience, and a refusal to remain silent in the face of cruelty. The Mohegan Sun Arena was pulsing with tension. The Fever and the Sun were locked in a game that had become symbolic of a season where Caitlin Clark's stardom had ignited both admiration and resentment across the league. Every time Caitlin touched the ball, the crowd roared, some with awe, others with hostility. Every pass she made, every shot she attempted, was met with a physicality that went beyond competitive spirit. She had become a lightning rod for the sport's growing pains, the face of change that some welcomed and others feared. Sophie sat on the bench, her jaw tight, her heart pounding as she watched play after play unfold, where Caitlin was bumped, shoved, and fouled without mercy. The officials' whistles seemed selective, their silence louder than the crowd's cheers. And then it happened. Sheldon, in what looked like a deliberate motion, jabbed her finger toward Caitlin's face during a defensive sequence. Caitlin recoiled, her hand over her eye, her face twisted in pain. The arena gasped. It wasn't just the physical harm, it was the humiliation, the sense of being constantly targeted. Sophie's stomach turned. She had seen that look before, not on Caitlin, but on herself years ago. The memory rose unbidden, raw and unfiltered. She was 12 again, in a small Missouri school hallway, surrounded by a group of older kids who mocked her for her name, her voice, her dreams. They shoved her into lockers, whispered cruel jokes, and made her dread each day. Teachers had noticed but done nothing. Adults had dismissed it as kids being kids. One afternoon, after she came home in tears, her father had driven her straight to a Taekwondo studio. "You're not going to learn how to fight," he had said. "You're going to learn how to stand." Her instructor, a quiet man with steel in his voice, had once told her during her black belt test, "The belt isn't for fighting, it's for protecting. Courage isn't about hurting others. It's about refusing to let fear dictate your silence." Those words had branded themselves into her character, shaping not only her style of play, but her entire moral compass. She became tough but not hard, fierce but not cruel. And now, watching Caitlin endure the same pattern of injustice she had once lived through, Sophie knew with absolute clarity that it was time to act. When she was subbed in late in the third quarter, with only 46 seconds left and the Fever up by 17, the energy shifted. Everyone in the arena could feel it. Sophie's eyes were fixed not on the scoreboard but on Sheldon. As Sheldon drove toward the basket again, Sophie stepped into her path, not recklessly, but deliberately. And in that split second, instinct took over. Her shoulder met Sheldon's with force, sending the Sun guard sprawling to the floor. The whistle blew, chaos erupted, and the arena exploded into shouts, gasps, and disbelief. It wasn't a basketball play, it was a statement, one that echoed far beyond that court. "If you want to hurt her, you'll have to go through me first." Players from both benches rushed in, referees scrambled to restore order, and commentators struggled to find words for what had just happened. But in that storm of noise and controversy, Sophie's focus never wavered from Caitlin. Across the court, Caitlin sat stunned, her hands still near her face, but her eyes met Sophie's. And in that brief exchange, a look of gratitude, relief, and perhaps recognition. Sophie knew she had done what she was meant to do. The ejection was swift, followed by a $5,000 fine that Sophie would later describe as the best money I've ever spent. As she walked off toward the tunnel, the crowd's reaction split down the middle. Some booing in disapproval, others cheering for a player who had finally stood up against what many saw as an unspoken injustice. But for Sophie, none of it mattered. This wasn't about applause or headlines. It was about a promise she had made to herself long ago, that no one she cared about would ever face cruelty alone, not while she was there to stop it. In the locker room after the game, the noise from the arena still echoing faintly through the walls, Sophie found Caitlin sitting quietly, her eyes red but her posture composed. The rookie looked up, visibly emotional, and for a moment neither of them spoke. There was nothing to say that words could capture. Then Caitlin smiled faintly and whispered, "You didn't have to do that." Sophie sat beside her, leaned forward, and replied softly, "Yeah, I did, because I know what it feels like when nobody does." That simple exchange became the beginning of a friendship grounded in mutual respect and understanding. A silent pact between two women navigating a sport that demanded both brilliance and armor. What had started as a moment of outrage became something deeper, a reminder of the invisible threads that connect those who recognize pain in another's eyes, who refuse to let history repeat itself unchecked. In the days that followed, headlines debated Sophie's action. Some called it reckless, others called it heroic. But inside the Fever locker room, her teammates saw it for what it was: loyalty in its purest form. Caitlin, still new to the league's brutal politics, began to understand that being great meant more than shooting records or highlight reels. It meant earning the kind of love and protection that couldn't be faked. Sophie's tackle became a symbol of defiance, of solidarity, of the kind of feminine strength the world often misinterprets. She hadn't acted out of rage, but out of remembrance, carrying forward the lessons of her past to shield someone else's present. Sometimes, the truest acts of courage don't come from our own wounds, but from our refusal to watch others endure what we once suffered in silence. And that night, beneath the bright lights of Mohegan Sun Arena, Sophie Cunningham's courage didn't just protect her teammate. It reignited the conversation about empathy, accountability,
And in help positions, and just really paying more attention to the three-point line.
And then what are you seeing from Maddie? She's been, really effective, set a career high. Just what do you?
Why did you do that? Caitlin asked softly, her voice trembling as she looked up at Sophie Cunningham, still stunned by what had unfolded. You didn't have to get yourself ejected for me. Sophie sat down beside her, her face still flushed from the adrenaline of the game, and for the first time since they had become teammates, she let the walls down. She shared the story she rarely told anyone. The story of the 12-year-old girl she once was, the one who had been bullied every day at school, pushed around, mocked, and made to feel invisible. When I was 12, she began, her voice steady but heavy with emotion. Kids used to make my life miserable. They'd call me names, trip me in the hallways, and laugh when I cried. But you know what hurt the most? It wasn't what they said or did. It was that nobody stood up for me. Not one person said, "This isn't right." Caitlin sat there listening, eyes wide, her breath shallow, sensing that what Sophie was revealing came from a place far deeper than simple anger. "So I made myself a promise," Sophie continued, looking directly into Caitlin's eyes. "I promised that if I ever saw someone else being treated the way I was, I wouldn't just watch it happen. I'd do something about it. And tonight, I did. The refs aren't protecting you. The league isn't protecting you. So I will." Her words hung in the air like a quiet vow. Caitlin's eyes filled with tears. Not of pain this time, but of recognition and gratitude. Of the deep human relief that comes when someone finally says, "I see you, and I won't let them hurt you anymore." "I've been feeling so alone out there," Caitlin whispered, her voice breaking. "Like everyone wants to see me fail, to break me down, just because of who I am and what I represent." Sophie shook her head, her arm wrapping around her teammate's shoulders. "You're not alone," she said firmly. "Not anymore. I've got your back, and I'll always have your back." That quiet conversation in the locker room transformed everything between them. From that night forward, they were no longer just teammates. They were bound by something stronger than the game itself, a shared understanding born out of struggle and defiance. Sophie had rediscovered her purpose, not just as a player, but as a protector, a kind of guardian for someone who had come to symbolize both the promise and the pressure of a new era in women's basketball. Within hours, the video of Sophie's tackle spread across social media, exploding into a storm of commentary and debate. Hashtags like #TeamBodyguard, #ProtectCaitlin, and #SophieStrong trended worldwide. Fans hailed Sophie as a hero, dubbing her Clark Security Guard, a nickname she would later embrace with humor and pride. Yet beyond the jokes and viral clips, something more profound was happening. A reckoning within the WNBA itself. For months, players and fans had watched Caitlin be targeted on the court with a level of aggression that went unchecked. Sophie's tackle, though technically a foul, had become a symbolic line in the sand. It wasn't about violence, it was about justice. Sophie did what we all wanted to do, one veteran player told reporters anonymously. She stood up and said, "Enough is enough." That single moment forced the league to finally acknowledge what many had whispered about all season. Within weeks, the WNBA announced new enforcement standards for flagrant fouls and unsportsmanlike conduct, a direct response to what fans were calling the Clark effect. But while pundits debated policies and fines, for Sophie and Caitlin, the real story was quieter, more personal. Their bond deepened off the court as they began spending long evenings together, talking about the pressure of fame, the noise of social media, and the constant scrutiny that came with being young women expected to be perfect under impossible expectations. Sophie taught me that I don't have to face everything alone. Caitlin would later tell a reporter, "She showed me what it means to have someone in your corner who will literally put their body on the line for you." By the end of the season, Caitlin had become one of the most talked about players in the world, her name synonymous with both brilliance and resilience. Sophie, meanwhile, didn't win any awards or set any records, but she won something far greater. She earned the respect of her peers, the admiration of fans, and the unbreakable bond of a sisterhood that transcended basketball. That infamous tackle, the one that had cost her an ejection and a $5,000 fine, had also bought her something priceless: the knowledge that she had lived up to her promise. In a sport where success is often measured by points and trophies, Sophie had found victory in loyalty and integrity. When people later asked if she regretted what she did, her answer never changed. "I regret that it was necessary, but I'll never regret doing it. That's what teammates do for each other. That's what family does." The black belt she had earned as a girl had once taught her how to fight, but life had since taught her something more powerful: that strength isn't about aggression, it's about protection, about using your courage not to dominate, but to defend.